Hey guys, I'm K10 of Jinx&Gunner, and we're back today with the second installment of the Craft Hoodie Edition. So we're trying to make something similar to this guy, like a craft hoodie, maybe cinched in at the waist, haven't decided that yet, and then the excess sleeves. So super comfy, super cozy, kind of a transition piece for spring. Last time we used the Hey June Lane Raglan as our starting pattern, and we kind of hacked and slashed and spread our way to some pattern pieces that we thought would work. And now it's time to cut them out and get sewing because I need this hoodie in my life. So just to show you my starting point, I have my fabric laid out with the direction of stretch going in the right direction, and I just have all of my pattern pieces laid out. If you recall, some of my pattern pieces, sleeve, I'm looking at you, are giant, so I wanted to make sure that everything would actually fit, and it looks like it does. So now before I actually cut it out, I'm going to bring this over to my iron and iron out all of those wrinkles because you don't want to cut something out on wrinkled fabric. So I got in there, I ironed all the yardage out, we're all set to go. I have my biggest pattern piece laid out, which is my sleeve, and I also laid out one of my bodice pieces on the fold just to make sure that width-wise the placement still works to be able to cut everything out. And I have my favorite cutting tools, a rotary cutter and a pair of scissors, or fabric shears. Normally a rotary cutter would be my #1 go-to, but this fabric's kind of thick, so I think I might be going for the shears. So okay, now we have everything cut out. 2 hoods, 2 sleeves, a front piece on the fold, a back piece on the fold, and then that's my extra fabric hanging out in the back in case I decide that I need to put a facing on the hem to enclose a drawstring or anything else. I don't know, but don't you just love a good flat lay? So now that we're all cut out, let's talk sewing. And there's a little bit of preparation that I did before we get going, and that's on the hood pattern pieces. So on the pattern, there is a marking for where you can put a buttonhole or a rivet or eyelet. I think it's actually called an eyelet. And so I did that. I installed a little eyelet using a press that I have, and I put, again, following the instructions for the Lane Raglan, I put a little bit of interfacing on the back side, and I also put another piece of the sweatshirt material because I just happen to know that for my eyelets, they work better when I put more inside them to like really clamp onto. So I put 2 layers with some interfacing in between, a little sandwich, and then I just did a little square top stitching around it to secure that fabric, but also I think it kind of gives a nice touch. So that's just one thing that I didn't catch on video, but I wanted to make sure you guys were aware. And now we can get sewing. So the first step, the first couple of steps, are to attach the sleeve to the bodice, front and back, at the raglan seams. So this is my sleeve piece. This is the front, this is the back, this is my front bodice piece. So I'm just going to lay right sides together, the bodice on top of the sleeve, and I'm going to stitch along this using my serger. You don't have to use a serger. If you don't have one, you could use a zigzag stitch, but I have one and I prefer to do that for knit. So I'm just gonna zip through that front. So now that I have my sleeves sewn onto my front and back bodice, we're going to sew the hood pieces right sides together along this curved outer seam. And then we're gonna bring everything over to the ironing board and give everything a good press. I decided to add a little bit of top stitching to the hood. This was optional, but I just think that it looks really nice. It gives it like a nice finish. And then since I did that, I also decided to add it to the raglan sleeves on my sweatshirt, or rather the raglan seams. I keep doing that. And now it's ready to have the side seams sewn up. So I'm just gonna match the hems at the bottom of the sleeve and the bottom of the sweatshirt, and then the armpits, and just feed it through my serger like that. So. So I put it on just to see how it's coming along. It's definitely got that relaxed feel. I only have a 1/2 inch. I was only going to hem it a 1/2 inch at the bottom, so it might be a little bit long right now, or I don't know. I have to think about it. Obviously the sleeves have a lot of excess, and I did that on purpose because I want to be able to gather them and then have that kind of billowed up. So it pulls up and it's got like a little bit of a poof. So we need some excess, or I need some excess, but this might be a little bit too much excess. So I'm gonna do the gathering stitches first to see how that goes. And then if it looks like there's too much, then I'll just trim along the hem as I see fit. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so this is with the gathering stitches that are very much tucked in. So you can see this is kind of like what I'm going for, this gathered look. And definitely there's too much, there's way too much. So if I just tuck it in all the way, it's basically covering my fingers. I want some fold back, but this fold back is about 4 inches long, which means if I took out 4 inches, it would be 2 inches over and 2 inches in. I think it would be about this long, which is probably a more appropriate length. Logic tells me I should chop off 4 inches, but I'm scared to do that. So I might just start with 2 inches and see where that gets us. Using my ruler, I'm just lining up 2 inches from the hem and then marking it with a heat erasing pen, but you could use chalk or whatever else you have on hand. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and cut along this line, chopping off all that extra. As you can see, I just did a quick triple check to make sure that it looks right given my arm's length, because once you cut, you can't go back. So 2 inches was definitely not enough. So I did that again. I took off another 2 inches. So this is 4 inches taken off of this sleeve, and this is the original one. And I still think that like another inch could come off of this. Okay, so update. Ta-da! I have taken a whopping 5 inches off of this sleeve. And I think it's finally to a point that's to my liking. And this is the original sleeve that was just like way too ginormous. So I'm gonna take 5 inches off of this, ginormo, and then I'm gonna start thinking about the hemline, where I want it to go. I have cut off 5 inches from this sleeve to match this sleeve, so I'm not 100% sure that they match exactly perfectly. So I'm gonna have to take out the gathering stitches and lay them on top of each other and just make sure everything's the same. I have also pinned up the hemline. So I'm trying to see where exactly I want it, and you may have noticed that I changed my pants. So these are high-waisted linen pants that I made, I don't know, last year or 2 years ago. I have some high-waisted jeans that I plan on wearing a sweatshirt with, but they're in the laundry. So this is my next best bet. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the cropped hemline looked good with what I was going for. So I have it pinned up 2.5 inches. So my thought was that I could do a 1.5 inch hemline and then run a drawstring through it so that I could do a little bit of gathering when I wore it if I wanted to. And that means that there's an extra inch up here that needs to be taken off. Okay, so I have trimmed the hemline of my sweatshirt 1 inch, and I have evened out the sleeves and regathered them. And I just cut out my first binding for my sleeve. What I basically did was I made sure that I was cutting in the direction of greatest stretch. I literally just used my hand and wrist as a measurement for what would be a good length. Obviously you have to remember that you're gonna have to sew the sides together, so you wanna leave a little bit of extra. Okay, so this is my sleeve cut piece. I'm just taking some scraps that I had from when I had cut out my prior pieces, and I'm just gonna lay it on top. I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and cut around it. And now we have 2 pieces, and we are going to sew them right sides together along the short end. We have our 2 cuff pieces. So I took my cuffs to the iron and I gave them a little press. I pressed them in half so that it is wrong sides together. And I also steamed and gave a little press to the end of my sleeves just to make sure that the gathers are stuck in place. And then what I did on this one is I just found the like quarter points of the cuff on the sleeve, and I just clipped them together with some Wonder Clips, I think, not sponsored. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with this sleeve, and I just thought I would show you. So on one side there's already a seam, so I don't need a marker there. But I just folded it in half to find the opposite end, marked it with a pin. And then same thing on the sleeve. This side has a seam, so when I hold it together I can see that this is the other side. And then I'm just going to put one on top of the other. So the cuff is going over the sleeve, right sides together, but that's really the only way that you can do it for the cuff because both sides are right sides. And I don't have any more wonder clips around me right now, so I'm just going to use pins and I'm just going to pin it in place. So I lined up the seams and then I'm matching the 2 pin points. I'm just going to stick 1 pin through all layers. And then because this area is so tiny, I'm just going to stretch the sleeve to meet the cuff and make sure that all of the edges are aligned. So it's going to be 3 edges because it's the edge of the sleeve, and then the cuff piece has 2 edges because it's folded. So I've pinned it on one side and I'm pinning it on the other. Honestly, I don't even know if I need this many pins because the area is so small, but you know, why not? Won't hurt anything, that's for sure. And again, I'm just making sure that all of my edges line up. I'm throwing another pin in there, and now we're going to take it back to the serger and just serge it through. So in preparation for turning up the hem, I have set 2 eyelets into my sweatshirt so that I will be able to feed a cord through the waist, which I can then cinch up if I feel like it. Now what I'm going to do is turn up the hem 1.5 inches, and I'm going to pin it down in preparation for sewing it. And then I'm going to take my hood piece, which has been off to the side, and I am going to pin and press the hem back on my hood piece as well. I have my hem all pinned up 1.5 inches, and I have my hood pinned back 1 inch. I actually realized after the fact that when I put in these eyelets, rather, it would have been better to make the stabilization, that like extra backing fabric, a little bit more over, because it makes it hard to fold. Like this fold should be a little bit closer and kind of forcing this to fold back 1 inch. But anyways, I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine now, and I'm just gonna stitch it around. Normally with a stretch fabric, I would be using a zigzag or a lightning bolt stitch, something stretchy, but because there's so much ease in this garment, I'm just gonna do a plain straight stitch. So that should be nice and quick. Okay, we are practically done now. We have the entire sweatshirt sewn up and hemmed, sleeves are on, gathered, everything's looking good. We have the hood all done. We just have to attach it to the actual sweatshirt. I just want to put the drawstring through the hood before I sew it on because I think it will be a little bit easier. So what I'm going to use is just a safety pin. And I have my drawstring and my safety pin, and I'm just gonna put it through the entire channel. I'm not even gonna worry about feeding it through the eyelets right now because the eyelets that I used are actually quite small, especially for the drawstring that I'm using, but I just liked this drawstring and I liked those eyelets, so I went with it. and I just think this will be an easier way. So I'm just pushing it through. Since the safety pin is hard and stiff, it's easy to like feel it within the channel. And I can just kind of scrunch it up and then pull the sweatshirt down. Okay, so now we have it all in there through the channel, but we have to pull it out through the eyelet. So I'm just gonna try to pick it out using the safety pin, because I think that will be the easiest way to do it. But honestly, I have no idea. So let's just try some stuff. One side done. The other side. Success! Now let's do the hem. I'm just gonna use the same tools that I did for the hood to feed in my drawstring for the hem. So I'll start with a safety pin. And this time I'm using eyelets that are bigger. I used the medium size instead of the small size that I used on the hood. So I think it might go a little bit more easily through. I'm hoping anyways, but we'll see. It's amazing what like simple household items can get you so far in sewing, like a safety pin. So we are done. Just gonna string that all the way through. I'm gonna tie my ends together so I don't lose one in there. And it is getting more and more done by the second. So now we have our hood. We know where the center back of the hood is because there is a seam in the center back. We are going to mark the center back of the sweatshirt by just folding to match the two raglan seams and marking it with a pin. And then I'm going to do the same thing to find the center front. So fold it, stick a pin in it, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite sides, so to find the quarters. So I'm just lining this all up, fold in half, jiggle it around until it all is laying smoothly, and then mark that quarter point. We can do the same thing on the hood. And I believe according to the pattern, there should be some overlap of the hood in the front. So I'm matching up the back seam. And again, this is right sides together, like just about everything in sewing. Well, not everything, but many things. And I'm matching up my quarter points. And again, when I get to the center, I'm just going to pin it in place. And you know, I noticed I have this little like triangle overlap on my hood after hemming. I'm just gonna cut that off because otherwise the serger's gonna cut it off anyways. And so this just kind of saves the serger the trouble. the center point. I'm just going to let it overlap where it would naturally. And that should be about the same distance as the other side. Okay, so we're really getting close to being done. This is like the last step. But because I know my fabric is kind of thick and I've got at the points at the edge of the hood 4 layers of this fabric, I think I'm actually gonna sew it together on my normal sewing machine first because I know that the neck is so open. It doesn't need to have a lot of stretch, and then I might just finish the edge with the serger because it's like a lot of layers to be held together. So let's go to the sewing machine. Probably it would have made more sense to put the hood inside of the shirt, but I did not do that. This is where we are right now. Do as I say, not as I do, folks. This is it. The last seam, like totally last. No more seams after this. So I have my hood tucked into my sweatshirt, how I should have sewn it at my sewing machine originally, instead of that like weird hood cocoon that I was doing. But you know, hindsight's 2020. And let's get to it. Okay folks, it is the moment of truth. This has been a long journey. We had a pattern that we started with, we hacked it away, made some changes, used our inspiration as a guide, and then hacked away a lot of the pattern pieces that we cut out of fabric because I added too much. Finally got it sewed together. We got the drawstrings in, even though, let's be real, like that hood drawstring did not want to go through that eyelet. And it is now the moment of truth to try it on, and I am so excited. That's my version of Rocky. Ah, so cute. All right, here she is. High in the front, low in the back, slouchy. She's got the sleeves going on. She has this awesome hood. It's nice and big. I think she came out so well. Got the little crossover detail at the top. If we wanted to, I could scrunch it in at the waist for a little bit more volume and a little bit more crop. Sporty, comfy, cozy, awesome sleeves. How cozy is that? So cozy. And she's done. All I have to do is figure out a way to take pictures without getting this stained before I do that, because cream colored sweatshirt, whose bright idea was that? Try to do this dance that everybody does on the internet, particularly like real boys. Hood is a little bit more manipulatable. No. You really shouldn't keep pins in your mouth. Just FYI. Do as I say, not as I do.